big win for St. John's at Madison Square Garden. 22nd ranked Johnnies. It felt like every time New Mexico made a run in this game, St. John's had an answer. New Mexico kept cutting it to like a 6-7 point deficit, and St. John's would hit a shot. New Mexico would come back. They'd cut it down to a 5-6 point deficit. But the Red Storm always had an answer. It was a pretty good weekend overall, I thought, for the Big East. The Big East needed wins like these to keep the conference moving as you head in toward Feast Week and everything else. There had been some doubts, some question marks about the Big East here. You have one of your premier teams at Madison Square Garden in a matchup that had a ton of eyeballs on it on an NFL Sunday. Nationally broadcasted game. St. John's gets a double-digit win.
Yeah, and, they needed it for a statement, right? I mean, not that New Mexico is – going to set the world on fire this year. I think they're a good team, and they got two really good players in Donovan Nett and Nelly Jr. Joseph. But, Rick Pitino a year ago, we all kind of thought it was going to just happen like that, right? Mm-hmm. Rick Pitino is going to take over St. John's. I remember saying it. I don't care who his players are. I'm going to rank him in the top 25.
You put them in the top 25 when they didn't have a team.
They didn't have a player.
They didn't have a player, and you put them in the top 25.
And now, you know what? They got players. They got dudes. They got NIL. They got themselves a backcourt with Kadary Richmond and Devion Smith, and R.J. Lewis was probably the best player in the court tonight overall. They got enough floor spacers. I'm kind of still a little bit concerned about their perimeter shooting.
Yeah, it's a
right?
problem.
A little bit.
It's a problem.
Today they started slow. They made a couple late. Aaron Scott made a big one. I don't know, man. I just think you got Rick Pitino and you got some dogs on your team.
Yeah,
you got some dogs.
Well, the way that St. John's is going to win this year is by just being tougher and more physical and making life difficult for you offensively and forcing turnovers and winning the rebounding battle and getting stuff done in transition. And there's going to be moments where they get open looks, and as long as they just get enough of them, that's all they need. You don't have to come out here and be Creighton. You don't have to come out here and shoot 43s a game, right? You have to be able to make enough where it's at least a threat for a couple of those guys while doing all of the other stuff well. I don't think that it should be – R.J. Lewis had 21 points, 11 boards, and 7 assists tonight, right? He got pretty close to a triple-double, and he is probably the third most likely guy on that team to get a triple-double. You have three creative, athletic playmakers on that perimeter that are old, right? You have guys like R.J. Lewis and Kadary Richmond who are just a nightmare defensively, and as long as they are doing –
Smith, Devin Smith's terrific. I mean, that's the one thing. Different
kind of defender, yeah, but he's still –
get up in you.
Yeah, they are really, really good on that end of the floor, and I really like this team. I think that the lack of shooting probably limits their ceiling, but I think that everything else they do well, it makes them good enough to be – that's why they're ranked in the top 25. That's why they look like a tournament team. That's why they're winning games. I mean, New Mexico had there were a couple possessions where they tried to make a run in that second half, and it felt like they were on the verge of it.
Get within 4?
No, they got within 5 once, and that was it. But it was one of those things where it just kind of felt like Big Brother was just kind of holding them off like this, right? And
Big Brother or Dad?
Yeah, whatever it was. It's just you knew who the top 25 can make a run, a deep run in the tournament. It was obvious who the better team was tonight, and I don't even think St. John's probably got past third gear. Right? I don't think we saw the best version of St. John's, and they just kind of went in there on a Sunday afternoon stroll and took care of business against a team that's probably look. I think New Mexico is going to be a tournament team.
So Kadary finishes with 14. I know there have been a lot of chatter about Kadary Richmond leading into this game. Kind of where are your guys' thoughts on Kadary and what his role is for this team and how that evolution of Kadary Richmond in a Red Storm uniform helps St. John's overall?
So we've all wondered how it would work with Kadary Richmond and Rick Pitino, right?
Yeah.
Because it hasn't worked great at the previous places, I would say, is fair to say. He's fought it a little bit. Well, he's with Rick Pitino for 8 months, and I think he understands that I have to buy in. If I'm going to play at the next level, I have to buy in. And, again, he's going to do that. He's going to do that. It's just a matter of time. But, again, Kadary Richmond doesn't need to average 20 points a game or anything like that.
Yeah.
The beauty of this team is they have balance. They've got 5 guys that I think can hurt you for the most part. And but Kadary, again, I think it's going to be a gradual process for him. And by league play, man, that backcourt is going to be like for the Big East, especially in the defensive end, what they can do. I wouldn't want to go against them.
Yeah, and I also think with Kadary, he understands when you're playing against Wagner, he doesn't need to go out there and get 20 and win a game for you.
And he's probably not going to, because he's kind of the guy that might play up and down the level of competition a little bit.
Yeah.
Too.
Yeah, and
He's been around long enough.
I know he hasn't been scoring, but he's still averaging 7 rebounds and 7 assists. Like, it's not like he's out there not producing.
Yeah.
And they're winning games. Like I
They're
don't
bye games. Right?
Yeah,
They're
that's
bye games.
that's my thing. Is
You
like
can't evaluate off these bye games.
No, and they're beating the Braves. It's not like they're. It'd be one thing if Kadary wasn't scoring and they needed like a buzzer beater to beat Quinnipiac, or they were down by 7 late against Wagner and had to make a run to come back, and Kadary wasn't doing anything. But they're just rolling over these teams, and he's kind of out there making sure that, like, just the steadying force. And we'll know more starting on Thursday. They get Baylor at the Baha Mar something, or I can't remember which one they're in. But,
yeah, Baha Mar.
Yeah,
I don't know
what
what it's
called.
called.
Whatever it is, they'll be in the Bahamas, and they get Baylor. And so we'll find out more about them from this event coming up this week. But if I'm a St. John's fan, I feel pretty good about where they are right now and what they can end up being this year.
All right, let's move on.